Hey guys, it's James from the Lore Masters, and we are back with the second part of our set review for Disney Lorcana, the first chapter. And this time we are going through all of the Amethyst cards. So similar to Amber, there is 34 of these. So we're going to go through them one by one and give you my opinion on them, whether they're worth playing or not, and we'll go through there. So the first one is 4-drop Anna, Heir to Arendelle. When you play this character, if you have a character named Elsa in play, choose one of your opponent's characters and they don't untap during their next turn. If there was an easier way to find Elsa and add it to your hand or play it to your board, then this card would be much more worth it. Unfortunately, there isn't. You have to hope to draw it. This card works best with the 3-drop Elsa because you can exert her to exert one of your opponent's characters and then lock it down with this Anna. But because this Anna does nothing without the Elsa, its stats are not particularly good for a 4-drop, it honestly isn't worth playing. So Archimedes, so every colour has a 1-drop 2/2 with no ability and 1 lore point. There's nothing special about these cards, they're honestly pack filler, so you can probably just skip this. Okay, so 7-drop uninkable Dr. Facilier, Agent Provocateur. So he's got 4 attack, 5 toughness with 3 lore points. He has Shift 5, and whenever one of your other characters is banished in a challenge, you may return that card to your hand. Very average card at best. It's probably best suited when you're about to suicide a bunch of your characters into your opponents to challenge them, so you can add them all back to your hand. But the chances of your opponent attacking your stuff while you've got this on the board is very slim. Plus the fact is, there is a 2-drop Facilier and a 3-drop. So you almost have to let them survive a couple of turns to shift onto this, or you need to play them off curve for this to work. I'm not a big fan of shift characters that do that because it's just unrealistic to do so. Honestly, very average, and the fact that it's uninkable as well, it is probably not even worth a consideration. Okay, so here's the 2-drop Dr. Facilier. So he's got 0 attack, 4 toughness, 1 lore point. He's got Challenger +2. So when he's challenging, it goes to 2 attack, 4 toughness. Not a bad card for a common. He can deal with a couple of small characters and then die. But his problem is, obviously, he's got 0 attack on the defense. So your opponent can just challenge him and just beat them without kind of giving any damage to your opponent's stuff. So it just isn't worth playing. Okay, so here's the 3-drop Dr. Facilier. So whenever you play a song, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one on the top of your deck and one on the bottom. Someone in the comments will need to remind me, if you're playing a song, whether this would activate after the song happens or beforehand. If it's before, this card's great because you can get to look at your top 2 and see what you're going to be drawing with friends on the other side. If it happens after, you've already drawn your 2 cards and then you're just looking at your next 2 for your next turn, basically, which is not as good. Honestly, it's not worth playing because 3-drop Maleficent can do a good as much job as singing Friends on the Other Side this can, and you get to draw a card from it as well. So yeah, it's just not even worth bothering with. Okay, so 4-drop Elsa. So it's a 4 attack, 4 toughness with no ability, 1 lore point. She's a common. There's nothing much to say about this card. It's probably going to be good in a sealed event, but in competitive play, no, it's just not good enough. It just does nothing. Okay, so 3-drop Elsa has the ability Exert, chosen opposing character. Like I say, this works with the Anna that we saw at the beginning of the video, but also it means that you can make any one of your opponent's characters vulnerable, so you can attack it with one of your other characters. Works well if your character's got Rush as well. But just bearing in mind, when you exert with this card, she exerts herself, so she's now vulnerable. So you can only really do it when you're ahead on board. Okay, and here's the big legendary Elsa. So she's an 8-drop uninkable, 4 attack, 6 toughness with 3 lore points. She has the ability Shift 6, and when you play this character, exert up to 2 chosen characters they can't ready at the start of the next turn. So fantastic abilities, it's just a very expensive card to cast. Because to hard cast it, 8 is a lot. It's uninkable as well, so if you see it early, it's going to clog up your hand. And Shift 6 as well. You've got a 3-drop Elsa and you've got a 4-drop Elsa. So again, if you play them really off curve, or you have to let them survive a couple of turns to get to this card. The payoff just isn't worth it. Very, very cool artwork, one of my favourite artworks of the set, but yeah, it just isn't worth the work you need to put it into play. Okay, so then we got 5-drop Flotsam, again uninkable. It has Rush, and has the ability your character's named Jetsam gain Rush as well. So I tested these cards when they first got revealed, and I came to the conclusion that I'm going to come to now. They are overcosted for what they do. If this card was 4 and maybe even inkable, it would be a lot better, but at 5 ink and uninkable, he just really is not worth playing. Even if you have both of them on the board, if your opponent just removes one of them and the other one becomes vulnerable, it just isn't worth the effort. The payoff is just not there. Okay, so you've got 4-drop Jafar. So this character gains +1 attack for each card in your hand. It has 2 lore points. We were speaking about this card on social media for a little while. We came to the conclusion that if you're playing this on turn 4, having inked a card every single turn, he's only going to have 2 or 3 attack when he comes in, which is not really worth the bother. And in late game, when you've only got 1 or 2 cards in your hand, he's going to be very tiny. He's an awful top deck. If you're literally 0 cards in your hand at the beginning of your turn, when you play him, he's going to be 0 attack. There is just much better cards you could be playing for 4 ink. So this card's not even worth it, even if you combo it with A Whole New World to give him 7 attack. It just isn't worth the payoff. So here's another Jafar. So again, 4-drop, Challenger +3. So he goes to 5 attack when he swings. Quite useful, gets rid of a lot of the bigger characters. He's only really playable if you can give him Rush with White Rabbit's Pocket Watch. Other than that, you know, your opponent is not going to put themselves in a position where this card can take advantage of it. So that's why the Rush is quite important on it. But again, this card is not worth playing anyway. Okay, so here's the other of the Eel brothers. So Jetsam. So he has Evasive, and he's a 4-cost. And has the ability your character's named Flotsam gain Evasive. So they give each other the abilities that they have, but again, they're overcosted. If this card was a 3-cost, it'd be great, but unfortunately, again, it's 4 ink, it's not worth the bother. And like I say, if your opponent removes one of them, then the whole thing falls apart. Okay, Magic Broom, Bucket Brigade. When you play this character, you may shuffle a card from any discard into its player's deck. This card was not bad when the card pool was a lot smaller, but now we know the full set is just not worth it anymore. We were hoping that we were going to get other brooms in this set to work with the Mickey Mouse, but unfortunately this is the only one. So maybe in the next couple of sets we might get some more brooms. But this card just generally isn't worth it anymore, because if it dies via damage, so things like Fire the Cannons or a Tinkerbell kills it, anything like that, you do not get it back. It's very rare that it would die in a challenge, so it just isn't worth playing. So 1-drop Maleficent, so uninkable, 1/1 with 2 lore points. In a dedicated Lore Masters deck, which uses a lot of the cheap characters with high lore points, it might work, but just in an Amethyst deck on its own, it's not going to work. It's just going to quest once and then it's going to get killed in a challenge by something. It just generally isn't worth the bother. The fact it's uninkable as well just means that if it's not in a good place to play it, so say like you're behind our board and things like that, you can't ink it just to play something better. You've just got to ink this card. Okay, 3-drop Maleficent, so it has the ability when you play this character you may draw a card. Very, very good card. The fact that it accelerates your board and draws a card while you're playing it is fantastic. It's also a target for friends on the other side to draw 2 cards, and you don't really care then if this card does die, because it's already put in the work. Very good for a common as well. Make sure you pick up your 4 copies of this one. Okay, and then we got Marshmallow, so he's a 6-drop uninkable with 5 attack, 5 toughness. When this character is banished in a challenge, you may return this card to your hand. So he's got 1 lore point. Now this card, at first glance, it looks quite good. However, if your opponent just literally just kills it with any direct damage, so I've mentioned Fire the Cannons, that's a good example, or Tinkerbell, or Smash, or anything like that, it just doesn't come back. It has to die in the challenge. and even then it's a 6-drop uninkable, so you're forced to play this as your only thing over and over. If your opponent uses Let It Go on it, it just feels really bad because you've just spent 6 ink on this thing. So against certain decks it might not be bad, but honestly, because it's uninkable, I wouldn't play this card. There's Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer. You pay 1 less to play broom characters. Whenever one of your broom characters is banished in a challenge, you may return that card to your hand. Like I said earlier, we've only got the one kind of broom. It's very difficult to draw them two together. There is no way to search them out, so you have to just hope naturally to draw them. But even the payoff is not worth it, because you're just getting a 1-drop 2/2 that shuffles back a card, and that's just really not worth it. That's just not going to cut it. So yeah, just not even worth bothering with, to be honest. Okay, so Olaf, 1-drop 1/3 with no ability. Again, this is pack filler, and there's nothing that combos with it, so not much to say on this one, so we can just move on. Pascal, so while you have another character in play, this character gains evasive. When the card pool was a lot smaller, this card did a lot of work, because your opponent would really struggled to kind of challenge it. But now there's lots of different ways to damage it. There's lots more evasives in the game. There's Tinkerbell Giant Fairy all over the place. This card just doesn't work anymore. Like I say, it used to be very good. It might still find a home if you don't face against Steel, but in all honesty, it's not worth a spot in your deck. So Rafiki is a 3-drop uninkable 3/3 with Rush with 1 lore point. If you can make advantage of the Rush, then fantastic. Pairs really well with the Elsa 3-drop, because you get to exert the character and then run over it with Rafiki. But the fact it's uninkable is unfortunately quite bad for him. But he's quite a reactive card, so you really don't want to play him when you are going first. It's generally better when you're going second. But he's not bad. He's a decent card for the cost. You just have to figure out whether you can justify the fact he's uninkable. So you got Sven, he's a 6-drop 5/7. Nice big stats, but it honestly has no ability. You could be playing better cards for 6 ink. So we'll just move on to the next card. So you got the Queen. So she's a 5-drop inkable with the ability exert herself to draw a card. She's a super rare. Not a bad card in all honesty, but the fact of the matter is, if you have to exert her to draw the card, so she can't challenge, she can't quest or anything like that. You just have to justify whether you can play a 5-drop and then just exert her every turn to draw a card. Chances are probably not, so she probably won't see that much play. But she's a nice option anyway in Amethyst. So you got 3-drop Wardrobe, 3 attack, 4 toughness. No ability at all, so it's quite useless. Might be good in a sealed deck tournament, just because its stats are pretty good for a 3-drop. But in honesty, in terms of competitive, no. You could just completely skip this one. Okay, so Tinkerbell, 5-drop uninkable, has evasive, and your characters named Peter Pan gain Challenger +1. This card's not worth it in the slightest. The fact it's 5-drop and uninkable just means it's completely unplayable, and giving Peter Pan Challenger +1 is not worth it, considering you can't search out either card. Just don't bother with this one, it's just not worth it. Okay, Ursula. When this card was revealed, we kind of really hoped that it worked with Flotsam and Jetsam, maybe reduced their cost or gave them special abilities. Now it's nothing to do with them, unfortunately. It has the ability, when you play this character, each opponent loses 1 lore. You may draw a card for each 1 lore lost this way. 2 attack, 8 toughness, which is 8 toughness is huge, but 3 lore points as well. This card seems like it was designed for multiplayer rather than 1v1. The way it's worded, so if you've got multiple opponents, make them all lose 1 lore and you draw 1 card for each one. Against, in a 1v1, you're just making your opponent lose 1 lore and you're drawing 1 card, which is not really that worth it for a 7-drop. I could be wrong, it could still see play, but the fact it's uninkable, you probably don't want to run too many copies of it. But we'll see with this card, I'll keep an eye on it. Okay, you've got Yzma. Whenever this character quests, look at the top card, put it on either the top or the bottom of your deck. Still not a fan of this card, mainly because it dies to fire the cannons and you're paying 2 cost. It doesn't net you any card advantage, it's just good for a little bit of consistency, but that's all it does. But honestly, yeah, I don't rate this card at all. If you really want to add the consistency to your deck, you can play it, but 9 times out of 10 it's probably going to die before it gets any real use out of it, so I'm just not a big fan. Okay, you've got Zeus, God of Lightning, so 4-drop uninkable with Rush and Challenger +4. So it goes to 4 attack when it swings, but it's got 0 attack on defense, so your opponent can just easily kill it. 2 lore points, which is not bad at all. Again, nice follow-up to Elsa, so you can play Elsa on turn 3, exert a character, then play this on turn 4, and swing over the character. Obviously just bearing in mind that the Zeus cannot hit your opponent's back, so if you are going to use it, just bear that in mind. Befuddle, return a character or item with cost 2 or less to its player's hand. A lot of the times this card is not worth bothering, unless you're bouncing your own item to do little cool tricks or whatever. You spending a card to bounce back your opponent is just going to end up with you just running out of cards in your hand, just to mess with your opponent a little bit. It's not worth it. You can probably just, avoid using this one altogether. So you've got Freeze, which is a 2-drop uninkable, exert chosen opposing character. Again, this is rarely worth it unless you can take advantage of the fact that you've just exerted it so you can attack over and trade in combat. With you winning over, then it's worth it, but the fact it's uninkable is really bad, so you probably just wouldn't want to use this at all. Friends on the other side, one of the best Amethyst cards in my opinion. So it's a free cost song, so a character with cost 3 or more can exert to sing this song for free, draw 2 cards. It works very well with the Maleficent the Maleficent 3-drop in Amethyst, because you get to draw a card from it when it comes into play, and then you can use it to sing this song to draw 2 more cards, and then it doesn't matter if it then gets killed in a combat because you've already got the ability off. But yeah, chances are you're going to be using this card with a lot of different 3-drops in your deck, but if you're using Amethyst, you should be running 4 copies of this card. So now we've got 1-drop song Reflection. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put them on back of the top of your deck in any order, and obviously if you've got 1 cost you can exert to sing this song. This card is dreadful. It is a -1 in terms of card advantage, just to rearrange the top 3 cards of your deck. It is not worth playing. Please do not play it, do not put it in your deck. Okay, and then Magic Mirror, so 2-drop uninkable item, pay 4 ink and exert it to draw a card. So this is a worst Beast's Mirror in my opinion, except you don't have to have an empty hand to play it or to use its ability, and it's uninkable as well. If you are running Amethyst and you're really hurting for some late game draw, then it is worth playing a couple of copies of this just so you can use your ink, but overall the fact it's uninkable really hurts the playability of this card, but we'll see if people use it in tournament decks. Then we've got Ursula's Cauldron, so another uninkable item, costs 2, has the ability Exert. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 on the top of your deck and the other on the bottom, so it gives you a little bit of consistency. If you don't want to draw the next card, then you can put it on the bottom. It helps you find kind of combo pieces, but again, I don't think this card is worth playing. Maybe in the future when manipulating the top of your deck is going to be good for a particular combo, but that doesn't exist yet, so it's just not worth playing. And finally is White Rabbit's Pocket Watch, so a 3-cost item, so you can exert it, pay 1 ink, chosen character gains Rush this turn. So very useful to make your whole deck reactive, so if your opponent is a little bit ahead on board, you can play something, give it Rush, attack over it. Just need to be aware of Beast Hard-Headed when you're playing this card, because you're essentially taking the turn off to play it, so you need to get good value off of it, and if your opponent then removes it, it just feels really bad. But play it if you feel that you would get advantage from the Rush. So if you've got big characters and you feel like they would be good to use, then why not? Yeah, try a couple of copies out, see how it goes. Right, so that is the full Amethyst set. So we hope you enjoyed it. I know I've enjoyed recording it for you. So that is it all for today. So make sure you come back tomorrow where we're going to move on to the next element. and we'll see you then.